Hello. Today we're going to be looking at question formation, and in particular how to make direct and indirect questions. So this is an important element that we have to be able to master. Oops. So remember basic sentence structure. It's subject, verb, and object. So Marion works at IGA. Here's my subject, my verb. Fred is helping his sister. Here I have an auxiliary plus my verb. Or Ollie has left the classroom. Here I have a verb in the present perfect with my auxiliary, as you can see. Remember that when we make direct questions, we follow a really basic rule that we call quas-vo or quas. It's a question word, auxiliary, subject, verb. So, in other words, you put your auxiliary in front of your subject. I always suggest that you use what you know. You know how to say, what is your name? And here we know that my verb to be goes in front of the subject. Or where do you live? You know that question already. Again, you put the auxiliary in front of the subject. A few basic principles that we want to tackle just to remind us about making questions is that the verb to be can be an auxiliary and it can also be a verb. Have also can be its own verb, and sometimes it is an auxiliary verb. And do also is sometimes an auxiliary and a verb. So you have to look at the sentence to determine if the word is playing a function of an auxiliary or as a verb. A few more things to remember is that what happens to your auxiliary and the verb depends on the tense. So in this one, what do you study? My tense is in the present, my auxiliary is do, and my verb stays in the base form. What did you study? Same thing, my verb stays in the base form, but my auxiliary changes because I want it to reflect the past tense. What are you studying? I'm working with the present progressive. In this case, my auxiliary is the verb to be in the present, and when I have a progressive, I have an ing on my verb. Or, how long has she been studying? It's present perfect progressive. I don't care if you know the names of the verb tenses, really. But in this case, of course, my auxiliary is the verb to have. That agrees with she, so I have to say has she, and then the rest of my verb structure. So you might say, what is an auxiliary? I know you've learned this before, but it's a word that helps transform your statement to make it into a negative or a direct question. Most sentences, if I say, for example, I am working on Sunday afternoon, that sentence, I am working, it already has its own auxiliary. But if I say, I ate a sandwich for lunch, then I don't have an auxiliary, and so I need one to make a negative or a question. So as I said, the auxiliary helps transform your statement. And so if there is no auxiliary, then you'll need one to make a direct question. So what are the choices of auxiliaries? You know them already. The verb to be, so in the present or in the past. Do, so do, does, or did. So these two are in the present. Of simple present, and this one is for the simple past. The verb to have is an auxiliary. Here, these have and has are for have in the present, and had, of course, is the past. And modals are also auxiliaries. So how do you know if you need an auxiliary? And I know that we've been through this before, but it's just good to review. You look at your statement, and you say, is there already an auxiliary? So yes, if there is one, you want to use it, or maybe transform it, for example, am to are, because you want to make a logical statement. And if you don't have an auxiliary, then you need one. And your three choices are do, does, and did. That's it. So you determine your auxiliary based on your verb tense. For example, if I say I ate a sandwich for lunch today, my verb ate is in the past tense, so my auxiliary also has to be in the past tense. What did you eat? So let's have a look. Making direct questions with the verb to be. in my regular sentence, he was sick yesterday. Here's my subject, my verb, and the rest of my sentence. But when I make my question, I just put my verb in front of the in front of the subject. So I just move them around, I transform them. Or I am working late tonight. Same thing. For one thing, I changed my subject to make it a logical question, but I put my verb in front of my subject. Are you working late tonight? I know you know how to do that already. But remember that if your auxiliary is do, does, or did, so again, these two are for the simple present. This does goes with he, she, and it, and did is for all subjects, but in the simple past, but your verb goes back to the base form. So I've just written a sentence here and just a couple of different questions you could make. Shannon bikes to work on Mondays. So is there an auxiliary in this sentence? No, there is no do, does, did. There's no am, are, is. There's no have or has or can or could, etc. So there's no auxiliary. And I need one to make a direct question. When does Shannon bike to work? Again, look at this. I put the S on my auxiliary and not on my verb. Or I could say, did Shannon bike to work last Monday? Here I'm putting it into the simple past. My auxiliary is did in the simple past. Making direct questions with have. Remember, have can be its own verb or it can be an auxiliary. When it's its own verb, then you're going to use the auxiliary do. For example, I have a white car. You could say, do you have a white car? Or I don't know what else you could say, something. But when have is an auxiliary, then you repeat it and don't change the verb form. So I could say, she has had a white car for 3 years. How long have you had a white car? Or how long has she had a white car? Again, it depends which auxiliary you choose depending on your subject or your subject pronoun. With modals, the same idea. You repeat the same modal, but you leave your verb in the base form. So I can play the guitar. Can you play the guitar? Again, I just put my modal in front of my subject or my subject pronoun. He should have finished his project earlier. Why should he have finished his project earlier? Okay, so these are examples of direct questions. But let's look at indirect questions. When we make an indirect question, oftentimes they're easier to make because the word order can be the same as in an affirmative statement. And here we have 3 examples of ways you can begin your indirect question. Can you tell me? Do you know? I wonder if. Of course, there are other alternatives, but I look at this and I say, can you tell me where the store is? Notice I put my verb to be here at the end. It's just like in the sentence. Yes, the store is on Main Street. Okay, so this is the correct structure. More examples. Where have they gone? This is my direct question. When I make my indirect question, I could start it with do you know? Do you know where they have gone? They have gone. We see that exact same structure here in the answer. They have gone to the grocery store. Or, what do you want? Can you tell me what you want? This part here, you want, is the same as in my affirmative statement. I want a different job. If the direct question uses do, let's have a look. When did she leave? So here is my direct question. My auxiliary do is in the past. When did she leave? I would say, do you know when she left? Because my answer would be, she left 2 hours ago. Do you know when she left? How often do they see each other? Could you tell me how often they see each other? So the answer is, they see each other. So what do we notice about these sentences, or these indirect questions rather? We do not use the do. We do not use did. For yes or no questions, we use the can you tell me or do you know or etc. Plus the words if or whether. So I could say, have you finished your activity? Can you tell me if you have finished your activity? Can you tell me whether you have finished your activity? Both are correct. Would you mind telling me if you can help me later? This is the answer is yes or no. So it's a yes or no indirect question. So one of the common problems is that with the verb to be, can you tell me where the grocery store is? Remember, you have to put your verb to be here at the end of the question. Can you tell me where the grocery store is? It is incorrect to say, I wonder if you can tell me where is the grocery store. That is incorrect. This is like the direct question structure. So that's it for right now. There's a lot to learn and to practice, especially to get the two of them straight. So I have a handout for you, and there will be some more examples and activities. And here I have one more example. Did you understand the difference? Of course, this is a direct question, or I wonder if you understood the difference. So there we have it. Thank you for listening, and I guess we're going to start practicing. Ciao.